Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everybody's doing great. I'm excited to be here, and I trust each of you are as well. Let me offer a word of welcome to you, and also to our board members who will be here to get started with the meeting. Let me call the meeting to order, and again, ask everyone to be at attention for the topics that we're going to discuss, which are going to be exciting today, as is always the case when the Innovate Alabama Board is together. So we're doing fun, exciting things for the good of the people of the state of Alabama. So with that, I'm going to ask Jordan if you will call the roll, sir.
Yes, sir. Governor Ivey, Vice Chairman Reed,
Here.
Senator Singleton, Representative Daniels, Representative Garrett,
Here.
Chairman Poole, Mrs. Brittany Somerville,
Here.
Mr. Rich Beelan,
Here.
Mr. Dave King, Mr. Abe Harper,
Here.
Dr. Michael Chambers.
Here.
Mr. Vice Chairman, we do have a quorum.
All right, a quorum is established, and we're ready to conduct business. Let me again say to the board members how much that I appreciate you all being here today and all the time and effort that you put forward to be a part of this board. Exciting things in Alabama's current and future as a result of what Alabama is about. And so we're going to move into our agenda. But before we go any further, it's a privilege to be at Tuskegee University today. And I want to recognize the president of Tuskegee, Dr. Charlotte Morris, to give us some remarks and a welcome to this glorious place. Dr. Morris.
Thank you. I don't look like that now. That is me. Or was me, I should say. Good afternoon to all of you. And thank you for coming to this historic place that we call Tuskegee University. I am pleased to welcome you to the hallowed grounds of Booker T. Washington, as we call it, but also to our place where we educate and where we graduate. And that's the important thing for us, to educate and graduate. But before I make my remarks, I want to introduce some members of my team who are here, if that's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Dexter Odom, our Vice President for Business Affairs and CFO. Philip Howard, our Vice President for University Advancement. Most of you worked with Kawana Ruffin in getting the place, well, you did in particular, so you know her, but Kawanda is there. Is Dr. Rice here yet? You worked with him also. And Abraham Joel, our Chief's IT person, and Crystal James, where are you? Okay, legal counsel and our external affairs person. Thank you all for coming. So now I want to just welcome you to the historic Tuskegee University. I regret that a number of our historic sites are not open today because of renovations, but that just gives you a chance or a reason to come back. So we want you to come back to our historic sites. Tuskegee University is actually the only HBCU that has been designated by the federal government as a national historic site. We are delighted that you chose our campus for you to have your board meeting. We know that you have choices and you could have gone elsewhere, but we are glad you are here. Like other institutions of higher learning, we are just in the second week of our opening of the fall semester here. And we are proud of the fact that we have exceeded our enrollment goal for this year. So we have an increase. Thank you. Thank you. We have a significant increase in first-year students on our campus, as well as our other students who decided to come back and be with us, and we're proud of that as well. We are in the second year here at Tuskegee of our strategic plan, our 5-year strategic plan, and we are still embracing the legacy and transforming the future for the students that we serve here at Tuskegee. It's an aggressive plan, and our vision dictates that we develop innovative and transformative leaders who solve the world's most complex problems in our society. The overarching pillars of that plan are student experiences, academic excellence, operating and organizational efficiency, research, innovation, and entrepreneurship, world-class faculty and staff, advances in infrastructure and resources, athletics, and of course, community and strategic partnerships. I want to share with you just a few of the innovative programs that we already have on our campus. One is our National Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity that's supported by the National Science Foundation. Our students in this area learn how to use methods and tools to make strategic decisions about information security, identity theft, and other forms of electronic fraud, computer viruses, hacking attacks, and of course, cyber warfare. Our graduate students in the STEM areas continue to demonstrate excellence in developing innovations and research projects that are changing the world and making it a safer, more economically efficient place for us to live. In other words, they are helping the university establish innovative solutions for real-world challenges through research, entrepreneurship, and scholarly endeavors. They are inventors, they are patent holders, and we are proud to say that last semester they produced 4 patents for the university in various areas. And I'll tell you about 2 of them. The first one is anti-cancer treatments that inhibit cancer cell proliferation and kill cancer cells. Also, the innovation of a new instrument for surgeons to use, a manifold scalpel handle for the equipment for surgeons. And another one is carbon nanofiber sensor for non-enzymatic glucose detection. Our students also are creating innovative ways to improve food production because, as you know, we are a land-grant institution and we do have agriculture here at our place of business. So just to share with you a few of the innovative things that we are doing on our campus. That's not all now. I could tell you a lot more, but I know you want to get on with your meeting. So I will say again how pleased we are to welcome you to Tuskegee University, the historic campus. And if there's anything that any of us can do for you while you're on our campus, please let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morris. We appreciate the invitation to be at Tuskegee and you hosting us today. And we are appreciative of all of your faculty members that are a part of our audience today that are here making sure that we have all we need while we're at Tuskegee. So thank you again so much. Before we move on with the rest of the meeting, let me mention to you, it's my privilege to chair the meeting today, but the only reason is because our chairman, Director Poole, is on a much needed vacation with his family and his kids. So we're hoping he's having a great time and he's left it to us to get the job done today. So we appreciate Bill Poole so much. With that, next order of business, I'll ask the members to look in tab 2 of their folders today. We have the minutes which have been distributed to the board members. I ask you to look at those. If there's any changes or substantive differences, please let us know. If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The minutes are adopted. With that, Ms. Cynthia Crutchfield, Thank you so much for all that you do for Innovate Alabama and for our board. And at this point, we're going to turn the program over to you to move forward with a number of initiatives. So we're anxious to hear.
Okay, thank you. And again, thanks to everyone for showing up today. We appreciate you joining us in person or online. And to the university, Dr. Morris, thank you so much for allowing us to come to the university. We enjoyed lunch with some of the students today. We've been walking around as if it was 30 years ago. It didn't take us long, though, to remember that we're not. But we are enjoying the campus and we appreciate you guys for having us here. First point of business for me is to go over sort of where we are in regards to Innovate Alabama. It actually feels like just last month that we had the meeting. I think it was June though, actually, so it's been a couple of months. We had a lot to get into after approval of so many items from that meeting. But even so, we want to continue the year sort of in the same stride with the strong goals and outcomes that we've been working towards this year. So we have had numerous speaking engagements. I won't go over all of them. Myself and others, particularly board members, I truly appreciate you guys agreeing to take the helm and make those visits with the various organizations who are asking us to be present and present our programs to them. So thank you all for that. We'll continue to do that as we move throughout the remainder of this year. We have a couple of conferences that will be supporting, a few tech showcases, things of that nature. So we still have quite a bit that we need to accomplish this year. We will continue to roll out some additional programs. You'll hear about some of those today. SSBCI, I think, is front of mind. We'll have an update on that. And kind of tell you where we are. We've made some progress, still a little bit of ways to go, and you're going to hear from our program managers today, giving you a little bit more detail on the way ahead for those programs. Sitter, the supplemental grant program, we did just close another round of that. I think we're excited to share with you today the outcome of that round. That continues to be a very strong program for us, and you'll hear about some things that we'll do into next year. But still very strong results from that program as well. Two new programs that you'll hear status on today, the network designation program, the tax credit programs. We are rolling those out and again, getting very, very good results. We're going to get some approvals on some tax credit applications today. So very, very strong response to those programs. As we near the end of the year, we do have our budget that will lay out, the 2024 budget for next year. We'll do a bit of a comparison for that so that you can kind of see where we were last year and some of the changes that we'll be making into next year. But essentially, the programming is the same. Our goal is to start picking up some of the additional things that have been laid out in the report. We are going to do an impact report this year because we have been very, very busy and we want to make sure that the board as well as the public is clear some of the progress that we've made based on the commission report. So we will be laying that out so that it's clear the progress that we're making and the outcomes that we're receiving from those programs. We'll continue with HBCU engagement, fuel, launchpad, programs of that nature. So stay tuned for those. And then some of the new things that we're doing that you'll be hearing about today is some of the role engagement that we plan to do into next year. We are going to be looking at some partnerships with the STEM Council of Alabama, trying to reach our K through 12 students. And then you'll hear a lot about the outdoor recreation events and initiatives as we move forward. So that's all I have. Any questions on that report? Okay. Hearing none, then we'll move right into the pillars and we'll start with access to capital. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Dr. Crutchfield, and also Mr. Vice Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to present today to the committee. Good to be back at Tuskegee. I have the opportunity to be down here back in the fall. Actually, I think when there were no students here. It was the Thanksgiving break, but I had a wonderful visit here, a lot of history here, and look forward to continue to support the great things you're doing at this university. As you recall, the American Rescue Plan had a program, the SSBCI program, which was federally funded under that plan to provide access to capital for entrepreneurs. Alabama's allocation under that program was $97.9 million. We submitted our application back in April, and we are in the final stages of approval. We expect approval is imminent to go forward with that. We want to thank the Innovate team for all they've done and to get that program moving forward. Under this funding, we would have two programs. One is a debt program, which is $72 million of the allocation. There are three options for entrepreneurs under that program: a loan guarantee, a loan participation, and collateral support. And another portion of the program, the second program, is the venture equity program, which is $25 million. There are two options under that program: a funds program, and also a co-investment. The two program managers are fortunate to be with us today. We're glad to have them with us today. First, Walt Postlewaite, who is the program manager for the debt program, will present, and then we'll hear from Rodney Sampson, who's a program manager for the venture equity program. We don't have any approval actions today, but we do look forward to hear about the status, the next steps, and some of the marketing plans. A little bit about the pipeline of entrepreneurs that are that we have currently, the lenders and investors that we've identified so far, and we'll just look forward to the update. So with that, would like to call on Mr. Postlewaite for your presentation.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Walt Postlewaite. I am the program manager for the debt side of the SSBCI program. The exciting part is, or the frustrating or anxiety part is, we're still waiting for the final word that everything is in place with U.S. Treasury. Part of the waiting process, we were part of the Southeast Region SSBCI conference at the beginning of this month in August. It was held in Atlanta and included the Southeast states. It was great to see some of our colleagues and our peers. I knew some of them from the 1.0 SSBCI program, and obviously 2.0 is larger, bigger, broader, a little bit more complex. So it was good to speak with these colleagues and peers about how they're approaching 2.0. I would say that the primary takeaway, and I think this is an advantage for us here in Alabama, is that we had a very successful 1.0 program, especially with the guarantee program, and Howard Wills gets the credit for that, and that's why we named the guarantee program in memory of him. But my takeaway is that success on the debt side is very closely tied to the relationship that the entity, agency, state has with the lenders in that state. I talked with some states that are struggling on deployment on the debt side. I talked to other states that are actually doing very well. And it seems to be, it's all relational back to the lenders. And I'll talk about our outreach here in just a moment. But I do think we have the advantage that we have very good relationships with our lenders out of the 1.0 program a decade ago. And obviously we have very strong lending relationships with the SBDC, some of the CDCs in other parts of that ecosystem. As far as the lenders, and since the debt program is a credit enhancement program, by definition, we have to work with our lenders, right? Our program is a credit risk mitigant for the lenders. And I would note that when 2.0 was approved back in 2021, I had mixed emotions. I was excited because I saw firsthand the success that 1.0 had with the state I was working with at that time. But the concern I had was with the program at this size. I was wondering how effective it could be. In 2021, the economy was very different than what we have today, and the credit lending atmosphere or environment was very different. I would note that Alabama is going to be the last date for approval, but I do not believe we'll be last with results very long. I think we're going to surpass our peers fairly quickly. And it's because the credit culture has changed in banking. The economy is fragile, it's volatile. Lenders are fairly liquid. I think that's a significant difference from 1.0. So the lenders have money that they want to lend out. They want to turn their cash into a note receivable. That's how they make money. The problem is with the economy in the current environment, credit risk is heightened. There's concerns with the lenders. So I think the stage is set for good success with our debt programs because we're able to step in, mitigate this increase of credit risk with our programs that will allow the lenders to say yes to the borrowers in Alabama and get the capital to these businesses so the businesses can thrive, grow, create jobs, and create resiliency. We've had very good feedback from the lenders. We've been engaged with the lenders early on. We're actually pumping the brakes a little bit because we have lenders calling us, wanting us to pre-approve loans, they've got pipelines. The need is there. But we're still waiting for final approval and some of these pieces to come in place. So instead of focusing on outreach, we've been focusing on the infrastructure. So once we get the thumbs up from Treasury, we can roll out more quickly than the 90-day time frame that's part of the program. So I would note that we have about 20 viable projects right now in the pipeline. Number of those, about 12 of them are coming through our relationship with the SBDC. I would note that we have 2 banks that I hear from regularly who are very anxious for this program to go live because they have borrowers that they want to say yes to, but without the credit risk mitigant that we have, this tool, they're reluctant to say yes. So the pipeline is growing. In 1.0, the state of Alabama had 30 active lenders participate with the program. I would note 3 actually represented over 50% of the transactions and the dollars deployed in the state of Alabama. You can see here on the slide that United Bank led the state in transactions. We had Service First Bank lead as far as dollar volume. And we had Southern States actually very strong in both. And those 3 banks were 50% of the production. So the working formula moving forward is to focus not just on those 30 banks and get them to sign up for 2.0, but we're also have identified another 40 banks that are in the state that we think would benefit greatly using our program and ultimately benefiting the residents in those communities where they do business. I would note that Alabama has a lot of banks. There are 97 chartered banks in the state of Alabama. That's a lot. So trying to get as many of them to participate is key, but also getting the larger ones to participate that have the throughput and the volume is very important as well. I would note that we are moving forward. I would say that the steps we're looking at right now are focusing on finishing our SOP, our standard operating procedures, followed by taking care of the legal documentation, and then thirdly, working on that actual interface of the portal so we can get the lenders to enroll. Because the dominoes that will fall is first we need the lenders to enroll, because we do need to approve them, bring them, make sure that they have signed the master agreements that we'll have in place. And then once that's complete, we can then start working with them to give them this credit enhancement on their loans. So those are the 3 dominoes, excuse me, that we have stacked up right now that we're just waiting to push over. And as noted, that could come at any time. I know Cynthia checks her email about 3 times a day thinking we may have it. So it is coming. We know it's coming. And we're trying to be prepared so we can act very, very quickly. I do know that because the complexity of this program, there has to be questions lot going on. Do we want to do the program individually, or do we want to do it at the end after the VC?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your presentation for the update. That's encouraging. Can you just refresh our memories about, you said when you last moved, what's the reason for that? Why do you think we're going to, being last, will surpass our peers?
Well, I would say the way it's turned out, it's been a strategic happenstance. I believe, well, I'll let Cynthia address perhaps why it took so long, but I think the timing of this is actually advantageous. As I noted, that the lending environment is different today than it was 6 months or 12 months ago. Talking to the other states at the regional conference, some of them have been active for a year, and they found that their launch was very slow. Was there an advantage to being approved earlier? I honestly don't think so. I think what it is going to fall upon, and the tranches come out in 3 tranches. Once we're approved, we'll get a third of the money upfront. And then after we deploy 80%, we can then go back for tranche 2. Another 80% deployed, we can go back to. So I don't think there was damage done or any negative consequences being the last state. But I think the timing specifically will make us deploy at a faster clip, because I think the banks are more in the need of this credit enhancement today than they were 6 or 12 months ago. I know that didn't answer your question directly, but I'm excited about the timing where I was not 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah, and what I would add, I think our lessons learned in terms of looking at some of the other programs that were laid out by other states, we were able to design a stronger program for the state of Alabama. I think our mix in terms of the debt side and the VC side, we really wanted to nail the venture capital side because our ecosystem has been crying out for that for quite a few years. So we wanted to make sure that we could structure a program that was realistic for the state of Alabama. And Miller will tell you that took a lot of time and back and forth, but we were able to get that done. So I do think that the tools will represent a significant move for the state of Alabama that allows us strong execution over the next 3.5+ years. In regards to the catch up, I think it's just a matter of we actually got to learn from the mistakes of others. At our meeting with the Federal Reserve Bank, they alluded to some of the mistakes that other states have made, which are strongly prohibited based on their guidance. And so we get the benefit of those mistakes to make sure that we don't do those things because they are federal funds. So all in all, I do think that we have a very, very strong program. And I think the most important thing for us is building that pipeline, which I think you just heard from Walt that he's been working here, the same for Rodney. And so as long as we can hit the road running, I think that we will be successful in getting that 97.9 million rolled out.
We are rather excited about getting moving.
Quick question. Based on when the federal funds come in the 3 segments, is there an ultimate time frame in which it must be deployed?
Yes. I believe we have 36 months to deploy a tranche. So there is a time frame with that. That being said, there's also a time frame for the reporting requirements under SSBCI. I believe that the time frame runs through the end of 2027, so 12/31/2027. I would anticipate, because this has been a slow rollout from a federal standpoint, I would believe that that reporting requirement will be extended, but it has not been yet. It was supposed to be a 7 to 10 year program. And if you do the math, we're not at that time period today, looking at 2027 for the reporting period.
But one more thing, we can also draw down 80%. Once we get to 80% of the tranche that we're executing, we can pull down the next tranche.
That's correct. Okay. Shall I hand over to
Yes.
Rodney Sampson?
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to extend greetings to the board, Cynthia, and the entire Innovate Alabama team, to my colleague Walt. Definitely exciting to be here at historic Tuskegee University today as well. And I'm equally excited because my 25 years is so, and to address that last piece, I'm sort of like Matthew 2016. So the last will be first, and the first should be last. So hopefully that'll help us through this process. So I'm going to slide over a little bit, or actually pull up a slide here. Get through this. So my colleague Walt said, we spent 2 days at the Federal Reserve Bank in Atlanta, Georgia. And I would say it was a teamwork experience. We had the opportunity to come together with our peers, good to see you, and our colleagues across the nation who are building similar programs on the debt side, but also venture capital and equity side as well. And just being there those 2 days, iron sharpens iron, teamwork makes the dream work, all of that. I actually felt that we were in a very strategic position, as Cynthia said. A lot of the programs had launched, and they really didn't take the time to build systems, workflows, but also frameworks for ensuring that they followed Treasury's policy guidelines for compliance and reporting. And one of the things that I'll say as a testament to Cynthia and the team, the work that Miller has done as well, is that they are following Treasury's guidelines to make sure that the state of Alabama maintains its compliance with Treasury, which is incredibly important, because if we get out of compliance, that could impact the capital that is available to the entrepreneurs, the founders on the ground. We received a lot of clarity as it relates to the reporting. The reporting is going to be incredibly important for the fund managers that participate in this program, and also for the investees or the founders that participate in the program as well. I want to take a minute and actually talk about how unprecedented this opportunity is for the state of Alabama and also our nation. One of the statistics that was given by the SSBCI director in Atlanta was that out of the $10 billion, approximately $3 billion will be invested in venture capital programs. And if you look at the contraction in our industry in terms of limited partners pulling back capital, venture funds not investing as fast or as rapid as they normally would in response to a lot of the perceived contraction in our economy, and some of it is real as well, that SSBCI is definitely filling a gap in terms of getting capital to the country. In 2022, there was approximately $270 million of venture capital invested in startups in the state of Alabama. So a $25 billion program representing approximately 10% of that is a substantive program. And when you include the 1-to-1 or up to 2-to-1 match, you're really talking about $50 million of capital flowing into this statewide ecosystem. And so again, I think you should applaud yourself for getting this across the finish line and getting this to market. As far as the venture capital program is concerned, we've been heads down developing our go-to-market strategy. We've been working with public relations company that is working with Alabama. And as soon as we get the order, we will definitely put out a statement. And I can tell you, venture capital works a little like Shark Tank. We're gonna get a lot of applications, and we hope to get a lot of companies applying for this capital. To handle that, we are putting systems in place, developing workflows, and we're going to work to automate this process and make it as intuitive and as streamlined as possible. Founders spend a lot of time building their products, working on their business, solving problems. Raising capital should not be another one of those problems. And so we want to be able to handle the flow of applicants into the program, and we want to triage those that we perceive should advance through the program. As you've heard, there are two programs under the venture capital equity program. One is a fund of funds, which means we will issue an RFP. Venture funds in the state and out of the state will apply to the RFP. And once we select those funds and make the investments in those fund managers, they then will be responsible for making the investments in the companies. We will not make the investments. That's a total of $9 million. But with the one-to-one match, in some cases 2-to-1, for emerging fund managers, new fund managers, 1-to-1, that will result in $18 million of capital. Now, one thing I know about fund managers, having been one, having been an LP and fund managers, if you can get them in a region, they're hungry for deal flow. And so hopefully through the curation of events and opportunities, in coalition with ecosystem builders, our colleges and universities, particularly our historically Black colleges and universities and minority serving institutions, if we can get our VCs on the ground, I think we can get more money. And that's one of the things that we're definitely going to work to do. On the direct investment program or the co-investment program, this is something that I want us all to kind of take away. It's sort of like a matching program. For every $1 that we invest in a company, that company has to raise another dollar. Or an investor who's invested in that company has to come and request that capital from us. And so that one-to-one match is going to be important to communicate out to the ecosystem of would-be applicants. SSBCI will solve part of this, but I think we're going to have to get creative to solve some of the parts for founders that don't have that match. We're also in the process of procuring tools that we will use to manage this program. The technology tools, some of them we already have in-house, some of them we'll be adding to our stack that will allow us to automate the process as much as possible to hopefully handle the flow of incoming deal flow as well. In closing, I'll tell you this, momentum is definitely building for the program. We're already talking to ecosystem building organizations, startup support programs on the ground. We're talking daily to fund managers as well who want to apply for that $9 million, $16 million for the co-investment program, and $9 million for the fund of funds program as well. We actually have, and we haven't even announced yet, this is just socialization of this opportunity in our close networks. We have a founder in Mobile, a woman of color, a Black woman in Mobile who's building a human resource startup. She's got 30 years of industry experience on the audit side of human resources. And now she's productizing it and has built software. And she's closing her first $500,000 in capital. And we'd be potentially a perfect fit for the other $500,000. So that's an example of the types of deals we'd like to look at as well. We intend to invest as small as 5,000 up to $1 million. You may say, why 5,000? Well, I can tell you as a former founder, sometimes the pre-seed round and the early capital that you can get, that first 5, that first 10, that first 25,000 is the momentum or the catalytic capital that you need to get that product maybe to a point where it's ready to do a pilot or go to market. And in nascent ecosystems, it's very important to have that early stage risk capital. Debt might not touch it, but we can do some of those more creative deals. So products coming out of universities, products coming out of accelerators and incubators as well. And we have one other deal I'd like to talk about. This is an example of an attraction deal to the state. A native of Alabama, matter of fact, a graduate of Tuskegee University. We are in early conversations with Dr. Lonnie Johnson, who is developing a new battery technology. And he's partnered up with an iconic Atlanta entrepreneur by the name of Burt Ellis. If you've ever heard of IXL, they're off Interstate 85. Burt is the CEO, and they're raising $5 million for their company. And so I had a conversation with Lonnie and Burt a couple weeks ago, and I said, you ever thought about bringing that company home? He says, I'd love to figure it out. Now, they've got to go out and raise the match capital, but if they can raise the match capital, then we'll be there ready to look at that deal. And we said, well, Lonnie, where would you like to headquarter this company? He said, I got to do it in Tuskegee. And so those are the type of opportunities, if we can close those type of deals in the state, but also attract really like these expats, right? Folks who have roots here back to the state as well. I'll close with that. Thank you. Comments, questions, please.
There's a return?
Absolutely. So to repeat the question, she wants to know how will we make decisions for investments in the companies. We are in the process of part of building our kind of SOPs and frameworks, developing our investment thesis for the direct investment program and our investment thesis for the funded funds program. I'll talk a little bit about the funds program. So that's $9 million. We're anticipating becoming limited partners or investors in those funds at $500,000 up to $1 million, maybe more, because we've only got a starting pot of $9 million there. And so when we think about the rubric, the first thing we've got to make sure is that these fund managers understand the statewide ecosystem. That's going to be incredibly important, is that they have an understanding of where to discover deal flow in the state. The next thing is we're going to look at the investment track record of the fund manager as well, even if it's as an individual, because if you're an emerging manager, it might be your first fund, so you might have been an investor, like an angel investor, you might have worked at another fund. We don't want to discount that experience as well, because what the industry is showing us is that emerging fund managers over the last decade are performing better than the larger, more experienced fund managers as well. The third thing we want to make sure is, because there's sort of another pot of capital to unlock, is in our application that got accepted by Treasury, they're looking for up to 60% of this capital to be invested in what the federal government has termed as SETI, socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. SETI has a geographical basis. If a company is located out of a CDFI tract, or if the founder or the employees work in that CDFI tract, but there are also other characteristics as well, whether you are a veteran, or whether you are a woman, or whether you are from a community, a racial ethnic community that hasn't had as much access to capital. And the federal government lays those out. And so we've got to make sure that we work with fund managers who can help us maximize this opportunity. I don't know the exact numbers, but if we reach that 60% goal, we kind of unlock another pot of money. So that's on the funded fund side. On the direct investing side and the co-investing side, let me put sort of like my angel or my startup or my VC hat on a little bit. And so every company is not what you call venture backable. Venture backable companies are the companies that tend to scale really fast in comparison to the amount of human capital or physical infrastructure. So that's why product-based companies like software companies or physical product companies tend to raise venture capital. Service-based companies tend not to raise venture capital because they don't fit the scale and or the return metric of those companies. So out the gate, we'll be looking at, is this a service-based company or is it venture-backed company? And now we can create our own rules too. And so we can take a step back and say, does this company have the potential to be a high-growth company in this region? And I think, again, we don't have to follow the rules of Silicon Valley, right? We don't make silicon chips here yet anyway. So let's create our own rules a little bit. That's number one. The second thing you want to look at is the traction of a company, the total addressable market of that company as well. And does this team have the existing domain expertise to execute on this capital? The final thing that we have to look at is, because this is a match program, does this particular entity, in Treasury they call them investees, does this investee have the match? Because if they don't have the match, they could have the greatest product, the greatest team. If they don't have the match, we can't do the deal. And so it's going to be very important for us to also be sensitive to that and perhaps look at other ways of making up that respective match. Before I move to the reporting side, did that answer your question? Okay, all right. On the reporting side, Treasury has been so kind to give us a 30-page guideline for reporting and for compliance. Reporting starts at the point of transaction. Every fund manager and every investee, we'll call the fund managers investors, and we'll call the companies investees. At the time of transaction, there are a minimum of 3 certifications we must have for every company. Let's say we've decided to make the investment, the lawyers have signed off, we've signed off. Now we have to get into the compliance part of the reporting. The first one is an SSBCI insider disclosure form. That company has to certify that myself or anybody on my team, anybody at Innovate Alabama, and actually anybody on the board of Innovate Alabama, anyone that can, an insider is anyone that could potentially influence the investment in a company or a fund. Treasury does not allow us to invest in a company that has an SSBCI insider, even if disclose it. They don't care about the disclosure. So what does an insider look like? If you are receiving any type of remuneration from that respective company in the form of equity, cash, consulting, a job, or et cetera, as insiders, we cannot invest in that company. They have to certify that, and we also have to do a certification as well. So there's going to be a lot of paperwork for SSBCI insiders. The next certification is we cannot invest in anyone that has a sex felony. So anyone that has a verifiable sex felony cannot receive money under this program. From what I understand, there was a congressional leader in Kentucky that added that to the reauthorization as a part of the American ARPA, the American Recovery Plan Act. The third thing is we have to capture their SETI information, whether they fall into a SETI category or not. We still have to have that certification on file. The next thing we have to have from a company or an investee at the time of transaction is, and we're going to take all of this stuff and put it in some really clear, simple documents so that we can all follow along, we can all stay compliant through this respective process. The fourth thing we need to know is how much capital have they raised at the time of the transaction? How many new jobs do we anticipate that this funding will provide to them or help them retain as well? Like if they're running through their cash flow and they're about to let folks off. New job creation or job retention as well, and the SETI makeup of those employees. And the third thing is the amount of revenue at transaction. Those three things we then have to report annually for the investees. I'm going to propose that our companies give that information to us quarterly, because in my experience, the companies that report to their investors more frequently do better as companies because it creates a sense of accountability. But annually is what is required by Treasury. And for the fund managers, now I'm switching to the fund-to-fund manager side, those investors have to report quarterly and annually. We have to report to Treasury the name of the fund, and in that quarter, the size of the fund in terms of how much money they have raised, because this money is also supposed to be catalytic. It's supposed to help as well. But we're going to take all of that, and we're going to lay all of that reporting out, and we have to report that for the life of the program.
Okay, just yes or no on this one. Are you tracking the success of the companies that are receiving funding through this Alabama?
So through the quarterly and the annual process, we'll collect that information. So if we're collecting like revenue growth or loss, capital raise, job creation, we'll be able at some point to synthesize the success. Remember, our goal throughout the program, our goal is to, for every dollar invested, is to create $10 of impact, right? So if we invest in $1 million deal, do they go on to raise 10 million later in the life of the 10-year period? So yes, we'll be tracking success. Now I will close with this. For the venture capital program, this is a very high risk category. The industry of the last 50 years has demonstrated these trends. About 25 to 30% of the companies are going to fail. The next 25 to 30%, let's say a third, will return the capital. And then the last 1/3 will give you your fund returns. And so that's sort of the metric that we've seen just kind of in this industry. But we would definitely be tracking success and failure. Thank you.
Short answers, yes.
This is very interesting information. And, we're spending a lot of time on it, but I think $97 million is worth spending some time on.
Absolutely.
So I've got another question for you.
Yes, sir.
Something you said a little while ago brought me back to several years ago as I was serving on the Innovate Alabama Commission, okay, which was the forerunner to all of what we're doing now. There was a comment made by the founder of Shipped, Bill Smith,
Yes.
who said, as one of our advisors, we had an advisory group that was giving us information to the commission. He said, if I can ever get them an employee, if I can ever get them to put their feet on Alabama soil, I got them. So the problem is I can't get them to come here, okay? You said a minute ago, you think we will get more venture capital investment for the companies that are in the program that are identified for the benefit of things going on in Alabama if we can get the venture capital managers to come here. How do
Sure. give you a little starting context, right? Today in America, 75% of venture capital goes to 3 states. I'm sure you can guess: California, New York, and Massachusetts. That means 25% of the rest of venture capital is going through 47 states and the U.S. territories. What we started to see at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 is that there was a migration from these very, very dense cities coming back inland. From an ecosystem perspective, Steve Case calls this the rise of the rest. You might have heard of his thesis where he believes the future of American innovative exceptionalism will not come from the coastal cities, but will come from the mainland, come from inland, right? Some people call it the flyover states as you go over the Midwest or what have you. And so if you kind of frame that as a thesis, what I've learned about founders, particularly founders that have been underinvested in, they will travel to where the money is. So we've seen it around events like South by Southwest or TechCrunch, Disrupt, Afrotech, all of these different events where you can venture Atlanta, where you're going to have a density of investment or investors there. And so one of the strategies, perhaps as an annual event or a quarterly event, is to figure out, if you got to pay them to come, I don't know how we get them here. If you can get capital on the ground, it's almost like economic development for capital formation, right? You know how you're trying to attract companies? If you can get venture capitalists to spend time here on the ground, keeping office hours, looking at deals, what happens, they start to look at, the cost of living. Oh, maybe I can have a place in Birmingham or a place in Tuskegee. You just got to figure out how to get them here with frequency and consistency. And if you can build you can leveraging capital, and it works a little bit different on the debt side, and I'll walk and speak to that. But in the venture capital, you can build a density of venture capital that invest in early stage, high risk, high growth companies. Founders talk to one another. So they'll say, look, I wasn't able to raise my seed round in Atlanta, Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, or San Francisco, but I was able to do it in Alabama. Then that becomes a new precedent. So it's going to take time. And what I would encourage this board and all the constituents here, this first $25 million may represent 10% of what was invested in 2022. It will represent more in 2023 because of the contraction in the markets. There's less capital in 2023. But if you can figure out to funnel more and more capital into early stage venture capital, that will attract more founders to the state and investors to the state as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Quick question, I'm sorry. Just in general, the current interest rate environment that we enjoy, if it changes from that, I say we enjoy, the current interest rate environment that we have, would that impact anything you said about the outlook for venture capital?
I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Interest rates, if they were to modify from where they are today, how would that impact the outlook?
You mean in the economy, interest rates in the economy?
Right.
So traditional LPs, and it's the fact that you can say traditional LP or traditional venture capital is showing that this industry has been around at least 50, 60 years. I was joking somewhere last week that venture capital is about as old as hip hop, but there was also some early venture capital, but modern day venture capital is about 50, 60 years old. And so, venture at one point was sort of contrarian to the capital market, right? The capital markets were doing one thing, they were doing another thing. But then as you become a more seasoned venture capitalist and have gotten returns and you're thinking about preservation of wealth and capital gains, you start to act more like a traditional capitalist. The opportunity, I think, is around the emerging venture capitalists. These are the scrappy, the gritty, they're figuring out any way they can to launch these micro funds. They're trying to figure out how to innovate in a crisis. And I think it's really about perspective because, private capital, a lot of times for limited partners, is post-tax capital. So it's not really subject to the markets. It's kind of like, what am I going to do with it? Do I want to preserve it or do I want to invest in it? And so I think you're starting to see when you have like the foundership, right? When you cycle through a startup and you sell it for a lot of money, you now have a lot of money to invest, lest it be subject to capital gains. And so those new investors in the market are not acting like the traditional capitalists. And so we can get more new emerging managers. And of course, this SSBCI capital is not subject to really interest rates. And I have to look at what are the potential, and I'll close with this, pitfalls of this program. You really just have to look at federal administrations, right? This administration, the prior administration before, but I think because there's so much bipartisan support of SSBCI and other programs like regional tech hubs, et cetera, that I think people will fight to keep these programs through respective administrations. All right. Thank you.
That was very, very good conversation on SSBCI. I hope that everyone sort of allows that to sink in, and hopefully within a couple of weeks, we will be off and running and doing transactions in a couple of months after that, hopefully sooner. Okay, so next up we have the SBIR STTR. I know that we're all looking at Dave King's face, but unfortunately he is not going to be here. So Dr. Chambers will present the information of the introduction of SBIR STTR grant funding program.
Right. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here at Tuskegee. And Dave King, former director of NASA, would have loved to have been here, but he unfortunately received a notice to appear in court to be a part of a jury, and decided that it was in his best interest to respond to that, and so he's not with us. But as you recall, the SBIR STTR program is a supplemental funding program. So you get one of these federal grants, small business investment, research, or small business technology transfer, you can then apply to this program and get supplemental funding. The first two rounds, we focused very much on Alabama companies. We had some provisions in the statute that allowed, had some restrictions trying to attract companies from outside the state into the state. And originally that was 75% of your workforce or your executive team being members of the state. The legislature, through the leadership we have, modified our statute, and now that statute reads, and the program reads, if you have 50% of your workforce and executive team in the state of Alabama, you're eligible, and we're giving you 12 months to move to the state. So you can imagine it's hard for someone to say, yes, I want the money, and get all their people there immediately. So these were modifications that were needed and that were done. And we had a lot of qualified companies, and we were very fortunate to have Miller Gervin kind of leading the charge, helping organize that. And I'd like to invite Miller to the podium to give us a few details.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to talk about this. So as Michael mentioned, we are very excited that the third round of SBIR and STTR supplemental funding has now completed. And thank you to Dr. Michael Chambers and Dave King for dedicating a lot of time and expertise to this. They spend a lot of energy working on it, and we really, really appreciate that. So there are a bunch of numbers up here. I'm going to get into those in just a second, but I do want to build a little bit on what Michael mentioned around what the legislature did this past session that I think will really make this program even more valuable for the state of Alabama going forward. And as Michael mentioned, prior to this most recent cycle of applications that we received, applicants had to be based in Alabama. So the program was tweaked to allow companies who have those underlying SBIR and STTR awards that may not yet be headquartered in Alabama to apply for that funding. So the short answer is this gives us an opportunity to market Alabama to some of those innovative companies that may be based elsewhere. They may apply, be selected, and they do have those 12 months, as mentioned, to have their primary place of business in Alabama, to have the majority of their executives and the majority of their employees as residents of the state of Alabama. So that really kind of gives us a bit of a defined universe to market to. Since 2018, there have been almost 34,000 awards given to recipients of those SBR and STTR funds. And as Rodney mentioned in talking about venture capital, but the top 5 states for those awards are California, Massachusetts, New York, Texas, and Virginia. And I don't think that will come as a surprise to anybody, but it does give us the opportunity to start developing a strategy of outreach and marketing the program to those states, especially, and to the recipients, I guess, especially those that may have a strategic reason to be in Alabama, whether that's a potential customer, an industry that's growing in the state, or certainly that great cost of doing business in the state. So stay tuned for more information about how that will move forward and start to market to those companies as a business attraction strategy. But we're really excited about the movement from the legislative perspective on that. So now just to look at the program as it stands now, we did have 22 applicants in this most recent cycle, and that those applicants requested $3.9 million. Which actually exceeded the funding that was allocated for this program. So we take that as a great sign that there is continued interest. After a review of all of those applications, the committee decided to award 15 companies awards representing a total of $2.14 million. And you can see a geographic breakdown on the screen. Definitely heavy in Huntsville with the defense sector, some life science spread across. You do have one company that is headquartered outside of the state in Colorado that is anticipating moving their headquarters here by the end of the year. So that's great news. Over the total life of the program, we have distributed, so this is over 3 rounds of funding, $9.76 million. And for those that might be interested, the next application cycle will open in January. So you can go to the Innovate Alabama website on that. And I know we talk a lot about metrics here. So for those that may be wondering about how are we measuring all of this and the impact this money is having on the state of Alabama, each of those recipients is required to submit every 6 months a report. And that report outlines how much of the money they have spent, what jobs have been created in the state, what jobs have been retained in the state. We also ask them about jobs created and retained outside of Alabama, seeing if maybe there's an opportunity for us to capture some more of those in the state. But really, we're focused on jobs created and retained in Alabama, as well as how much outside capital have they raised, whether that's in the form of a grant or private capital dollars, or debt if they have that. And then commercialized products. Want to make sure that especially on those STTR, those are the tech transfer, working through universities, that the products are continuing to be developed, especially looking at opportunities for the private sector to use those products. And then the last piece that we ask about is intellectual property activity. So we want to see our patents being filed, what all has been issued, what is provisional or pending. So I know the team at HRNA is compiling the results of those reports every 6 months when they come in. We've made actually a couple tweaks to that reporting just as we've seen the early numbers come in, make sure we're capturing everything correctly. But as this is still a nascent program, we don't have solid numbers, but we are all trending in the right direction on jobs being created and intellectual property being developed. So happy to answer any questions that y'all might have. All right, thank you very much.
Crutchfield.
Ms. Crutchfield, continue.
Okay, thank you, Miller. Thank you, Dr. Chambers, for that report. Next up, we have a very popular program, the Innovate Alabama Tax Credit Program. And we'll have Are those positive smiles? We'll have Representative Anthony Daniels intro that program.
Well, thank you, Ms. Crutchfield. Certainly, thank you for your leadership, and also the board's guidance in this process. We've completed our second round of Innovate Alabama tax credit program. This round, we received 7 economic development applications that were submitted. 7 were approved. We also received 12 applications for tax credits totaling over $18.9 million, which we'll review today. We're recommending approval of 11 applications to be presented today with an adjusted amount of the tax credit value at over $12.8 million. And we are presenting the applications today, and we are requesting individual approval for each application. And now I'll turn the floor back over to Ms. Crutchfield to present them.
Thank you very much. So we're going to do something a little bit different this time. Last time we approved in bulk. We're going to do each one individually. It will get a little bit more complicated as we progress with this program. Just for reminders for the room, just to make sure everybody's understanding sort of the program in general. Our current process, we have no caps on the application amount. We will readdress that as the program matures, but at this point, we do not have caps on that program. Costs that we are considering when we assess the application is really dependent on, we're relying on what was done with Commerce, so we're following their model. We're not creating new rules. However, as we evolve in time, because we are talking about tech accelerators and innovative companies, we may adjust those rules as needed. We are not allowing investment capital, meaning that you cannot apply for funds that you plan to purchase stocks of companies and equity in companies. We are not right now allowing housing stipends. We are not allowing multi-year awards because we want to see what changes we need to make to the program, and we're just concerned about doing multi-year at this point. So we're only approving 1-year funds, and keep in mind that we will see a couple of applications today where we have adjusted those numbers to only do 1 year. Keep in mind, much like the other programs that we've talked about today, reporting is required, and organizations are required to sign a funding agreement that outlines their responsibilities and how they will use the funds that are being delivered under this program. Big reminder to the board of directors, if you have an affiliation with companies that we will approve, please recuse yourself for the record so that we can ensure that we are staying true to the rules of the program. So we'll jump right into it, and I'm going to try to move us quickly on these because we do have 11 programs that we are going to, that we're recommending approval for. The first item is for the Alabama Artificial Intelligence Center of Excellence. We are recommending $514,000 for that particular organization. In terms of their mission, they provide, they're an artificial intelligence center of excellence, and they focus on startup accelerators. They basically do launch and learn labs with the Startup Academy, and it's basically 2 13-week programs. So again, we're recommending approval for $514,000 on that particular item.
Second. All right, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, Ms. Crutchfield, we're going to move through these 11 faster than that.
Okay. Okay, Birmingham bound. We're recommending approval on $770,000, and that is, their program is bound for success.
Our motion. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
We didn't get, hold on, we need a recusal.
I think we want it for the record.
Are we good?
Recuse
Okay.
for,
Okay.
conflict of affiliation. Sorry, it's a lot to say. It's a lot to say.
Okay.
Jordan, so noted.
Okay. Next one is CARA. We're recommending, or they requested $2.25 million. We are offering $500,000 for that application.
Motion. Have a motion. Have a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries.
Next up, Innovation Depot. They are requesting 2.6 million. We are recommending 1.27 million. That is again due to the crossover of years. So are there any recusals on this one?
I recuse for board member. Just recuse.
I recuse myself also.
Can you also confirm the approval amount? It was different than what's listed in the column.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Can you confirm the funding recommended amount? It was different than what's listed in our sheet.
Oh, 1.3, sorry, 1.356 million.
Okay, so we have a motion for Innovation Depot, 2 recusals. We have a second. The remainder of the board voting. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It carries. Ms. Crutchfield?
Okay, next up is Innovation Portal. They are requesting $638,000. We are recommending approval for $638,000.
Mr. Chairman. We have a motion.
Recusals?
A
Any
second.
Yes, I recuse myself as a member of the board of Innovation Portal.
Okay, so we have 2 recusals. So noted, Jordan. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and the recusals are noted. Board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. Ms. Crutchfield?
Okay, Mid-City Accelerator, they are requesting $2 million. We are recommending approval for, oh, hold on, no, so 850,000 is our request. We're recommending approval for 850,000.
So moved. Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any recusals? Seeing none, the board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. Ms. Crutchfield?
Okay, Opportunity Alabama, they are requesting $2 million. We are offering $1,025,000, just over $1,025,000.
All right, do we have a motion? Second. Any recusals? Seeing none, the board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It carries. Ms. Crutchfield?
Great. Next up, Prosper Foundation, they're requesting 1.25 million. We are recommending approval of the same.
We have a motion and a second. Any recusals? We have 1 recusal on the end. Jordan, do you have a record of that? All right, the board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Ms. Crutchfield?
Next up, Ref Birmingham, they're requesting $567,703. We are recommending approval of the same.
All right, do we hear a motion? We have a motion and a second. Any recusals? Seeing none, the board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Ms. Crutchfield?
Southern Research is next. They are requesting 2.99 million, and we are recommending approval of the same.
So move. Sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Any recusals? Seeing none, the board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Ms. Crutchfield, number 11.
Final item, Tuscaloosa County Industrial Development Authority. They are requesting 2.4 million. We are recommending approval of the same.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. Recusals? Seeing none, the board will vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And it passes. Ms. Crutchfield?
Okay, next up is the Network Designation Program. We have Ms. Brittany Somerville and Dr. Michael Chambers will introduce that program.
Thank you. I'm really excited to note that the network designation program is off to a great start. We launched 3 new programs to, in essence, help these relationships between any kind of economic development participants or economic ecosystem participants, rather. And I have the pleasure of introducing the first 2 to you today, the entity designation program and also the community designation program. And our intent here is really to get the entities and the communities to first identify their innovation assets and then second identify any kind of additional projects that they'd like to undertake. So far, we've received 5 applications for the entity program and 2 applications for the community program. In order to apply for the entity designation program, an organization has to be a 501c3 nonprofit registered to do business in Alabama. Of note, this category doesn't include institutions of higher education. In a moment, Dr. Chambers will introduce the higher education designation. I'd also like to let you know that this is a new program. We have offered 3 different training webinars to assist any kind of organizations as they prepare their applications. On the community designation program, an organization has to be a municipality, a county, or a federally recognized Native American tribe in the state of Alabama. And now Dr. Chambers will introduce the University and Education Designation Program.
So the third category is university higher education. As you might imagine, to qualify, you must be an institute of higher education, college or university. It applies both to 2-year and 4-year institutions. And the only really credential is we follow the 7 credentialing organizations recognized by the United States Department of Education. So if you are credentialed as an institution under one of those, you are eligible to qualify. And we encourage you to do that. We want to emphasize that once you do get the designation, you're eligible to apply for grants up to $250,000. So, we encourage everyone in all the categories to take advantage of this. And for the education or higher ed component, we have one Talladega College application is already in. It's our understanding that there are 8 others, and among those, our host university here, Tuskegee, as well as Alabama State, Alabama A&M, Auburn, Drake State, University of Alabama, Birmingham, the University of South Alabama, and the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. So we encourage all of you to apply, and we really appreciate your interest. And I wanted to invite now Imran Okil from HRNA to give a few details about the program. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here today. And thank you to Dr. Chambers and Ms. Somerville for introducing the program. My name is Imran Akil. I am a principal at HRNA Advisors. I'm based out of our Raleigh, North Carolina office, and I lead a number of our firm's innovation ecosystem and knowledge economy work across the country and beyond. As you all have heard, there are 3 programs as part of the innovation designation effort. The reason these programs exist, and perhaps more broadly, the reason the network exists, is that great knowledge economies are highly interconnected. That is to say, the people, the programs, the places, all of the things that make economies function are constantly talking and connecting and sharing and aligning and collaborating and so on. So this designation program is intended to identify and celebrate and coordinate between these various assets. This program is intended to allow these various entities, whether it be innovative entity designation recipients, innovative community designation recipients, or innovative university or other education designation recipients, an opportunity to receive funding, to participate in various programs, and to benefit from other resources that are provided by Innovate Alabama. As you've already heard, the program awards initially, upon application, up to $250,000 in funding, and recipients of the designation have access to ongoing programming and other resources, including a student-to-be-launched web-based tool for networking opportunities and learning and understanding what other assets and members of the network are doing across the state of Alabama. The network is still evolving. We are thinking through ways to enhance and uplift and strengthen the network. And those opportunities perhaps include networking mechanisms, regional challenges. So the first round, as you are familiar with now, is open to municipalities, to cities, to towns, to counties, to universities and community colleges and so on. But as you start to think about Alabama's economy more broadly, we hope to see regional efforts emerge where larger regions, not just the city, but perhaps a team of cities and counties and towns come together and propose a way to develop an innovation ecosystem. New grant opportunities, new learning opportunities, technical assistance, and advocacy. The process for becoming a part of the Innovate Alabama network begins with an application. The application is then submitted and scored by Innovate Alabama. And upon scoring, successful applicants will receive the designation and will receive an initial grant, and then will be eligible to participate in other Innovate Alabama programs. We launched the program recently with the applications going live. You heard from Somerville on some of the numbers around the applicants. As a reminder, we've received 2 entity applicants so far, 5 community applicants, and 1 university. But the applications are still open. We are continuing to receive and review applications. We contemplate closing applications on September 8th, and then the scoring and award announcements will begin later in September. And with that, I will take questions. Great, thank you. Yes. We do. The application process, I hope, brings out an opportunity for these entities, whether they're universities or others, to think about how they want to put their best foot forward as a part of the network. So we imagine they're going through that process today, and we'll submit comprehensive applications over the coming weeks.
Typically, we get the flood just before the date closes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have a pilot that we're looking to implement. So we have talent attraction and retention, and Rich Phelan will do the introduction on that one.
Thank you, Cynthia. Mr. Vice Chairman, I'm introducing a pilot program that aims to support our talent and retention pillar. This program is focused on building Alabama's tech-skilled workforce of the future. Although students throughout the state may participate on the platform, we want to focus our offering our rural K-12 students an opportunity to develop tech skills in the place where they live. I think it's very important that all these children get access to experiences. That's how they'll ultimately develop to be able to apply for a lot of the monies that we've talked about. Specifically, the program exploits the increased need for a workforce skilled in data-related careers such as data science and data analytics. The program allows students to be matched with corporate sponsors seeking data skills for virtual internships at the same time developing interviewing and team building skills. Josh Jones is the CEO of QuantHub and has more than 25 years in the data science industry. He's an innovative entrepreneur right here in Alabama and is personally committed to building our future workforce in all pockets of our state. So I invite Josh to join us at the podium.
All right, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Crutchfield and members of the board, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak before you today. In the interest of time, I may speed through some of these and really with the goal of touching on 2 key things. First of all, I'd like to give you a little bit of context around what QuantHub is and the program that we're currently implementing in Alabama schools, and then talk about how this ties back into workforce development. So I will fast forward through a couple of these different slides here, but to start, just give you some context. So what QuantHub is it's a data skills training platform. And we were started about 5 years ago, originally with intent and goal of teaching data and AI skills in corporate settings. So a number of our corporate clients are companies like McKinsey & Company, Southern Company, Blue Cross and Blue Shield. We developed expertise around testing data skills, but then also training employees across the workforce. And what we discovered was a tremendous opportunity really on our doorstep, and we realized that we shouldn't be waiting to teach data skills until people are in the corporate setting. This is something that really should be taught in K through 12. And so what we did is we proposed to the state of Alabama, to the Department of Education, to do a pilot with 2,000 students, stratified across the state, and essentially make this program available in schools. So the way this works is this is typically rolled out in high school settings. And what we've discovered is that many of the core foundational skills that you need to be a data engineer, a data scientist, or even a data analyst are skills that are actually being tested on the ACT, math and science standards and so forth. So what QuantHub is and how it's different than a textbook is it's actually an adaptive platform that learns how each student learns and really stays at their pace. So one of the big challenges that teachers in the classroom face is if you have 30 kids in the classroom, they're all at different levels and different places in terms of their learning. Unfortunately, some of them get left behind just as the class moves on. So what QuantHub does is it actually adapts to their learning pace, and teachers typically use this as what they call a bell ringer, which is about a 5-minute exercise at the beginning or the end of class. So again, I'll fast forward through some of these. This is an example of the platform here. Students, again, many of these skills they would be learning in math or science anyway. And I'm providing all of this as sort of just background for where we are today in terms of how it converges with Innovate Alabama. So again, I'm going to fast forward through a lot of this. So this is an example in a corporate setting, many of the different skills that you would learn to be a data citizen. That's things like how to use a dashboard, how to read charts and graphs, which again correlate very nicely with the school setting. Now right here, this is an example of an actual lesson planner that we launched this year where teachers can go in and align the skills that we're teaching with the state courses of study and those different standards. I will say that as a result of this 2,000 student pilot, again, we tested it in 16 different counties across the state. The State Board of Education agreed to roll it out statewide, starting with 40,000 licenses. So starting this fall, any school that wants to can register for QuantHub, and teachers can use it in their classes. So the opportunity that we realized was, I'm an entrepreneur, and I see these kids using this platform. And I realized that if we were to pick the best of these students that are using this platform, they're probably going to make really good interns. And so we ended up hiring 3 of these students that went through this initial 2,000 person pilot, and they were brilliant kids, very quiet, not the type of people you'd normally expect in a corporate internship. In most cases, they were rural Alabama citizens. They did not have the ability, transportation or the means traditionally to compete for an internship like this, but because we could actually use the platform to see who was finishing all the courses, who was contacting their teachers and saying, give me more, I want to learn more about AI, I want to learn more about computer science. We realized this opens up a tremendous opportunity for us as a state. And so keep in mind, the same skills that these students are learning on this platform are the same skills that our corporate customers are using in the corporate environments, either to test on the people that they hire or train their existing employees. And so we can go from the classroom to the corporate setting and say these kids have the skills that they need to be successful in these data careers. And so what we decided to do was actually start an internship program. And we started talking to a number of our different corporate partners. I'll fast forward here so you can see. These are all organizations that had so far verbally committed, essentially at the C-suite. Someone said, the proposal was, if we have 40,000 students across the state that we're teaching data skills, we're going to go in and pick the top 100. We're going to prioritize rural areas, those that are underserved areas. And out of those 100, we're going to interview teachers, counselors, and narrow that list down to about 25 students. So if we take the best 25 students out of 40,000 that have gone through this data skills training, they're probably going to be really good high school senior interns. And so these corporations have all said, hey, I'll take one as an intern in our data analytics department. And so as we were spinning this up, essentially assembled an informal council of advisors from across the state and asked for their advice on really how do we take this to the next level? How do we build the workforce of tomorrow? Ms. Crutchfield was willing to volunteer and support us in that effort as well. And so what we decided is that to really spin this up, we should hire at least a full-time internship coordinator with the goal of traveling to these rural areas, helping us find the best of these students and putting them in connection with these corporate partners to complete these internships. Since then, I've also started talking to various universities across the state with the idea of getting them exposure to college recruiters for their data analytics programs. And so one of the unique things about the data science industry is that obviously it's a growing industry. It's in demand. From an economic impact standpoint, I'll fast forward here. The average salary of a high school graduate is about $30,000. The average graduate of a data analyst is $68,000. The average salary of a data scientist in Alabama is $108,000. So our ability to really have an impact across the state and rural areas while building the workforce of tomorrow, I think this is a really neat opportunity. And one of the great things about data science is it doesn't actually require them to be physically present on the internship. And so we're looking at corporate partners that will allow them to do these internships virtually, which means that we can get past issues with transportation or having the right clothes to feel like they can show up in a corporate setting. So the 25 students is candidly an arbitrary number. We felt like it was a good place to start from a pilot standpoint, but with 40,000 students this first year, we feel like we really can see if we can get some traction here. And if so, and in future years, obviously we would want to push that into the hundreds, if not thousands of students. So from my past in entrepreneurship, hiring data scientists is really hard. Hiring data scientists that will move from the bigger cities to Alabama is also hard. But if we can train them in our own backyard, I think it creates a tremendous opportunity that converges really well with the priorities of Innovate Alabama. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions or get out of your way.
Have we had any discussions or interface with the Lieutenant Governor's 21st Century Workforce Commission?
Not yet.
Okay, so that's something we need to do. We just had a meeting this week about that, and I think this would dovetail nicely into their strategy. So
I know that Bill Poole and I did talk briefly about connecting on some of those issues, so he might have had that in mind when we chatted briefly. So that's something that we were planning to do, but I would certainly love to. Obviously, I really do believe this is the tip of the iceberg. And what we were realizing is, hey, this is becoming something we ought to formalize this and at least put a full-time person in, because we as a small startup, we could sort of grab the low-hanging fruit, but what we really want to do is really cover the four corners of the state and make sure that we really get good representation. And so that's why putting a person in this full-time position, I think will really help us do the things we need to do to build a program. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Jones, talking about the 25 students and then we're looking to move to hundreds, as you stated. Who and what's the process for educators in Alabama to understand how the Quant Hub product works and they're using it as a teaching tool? Help me understand, how does the teacher get trained on being able to know how to use the product?
So we have a K-12 education team, including an outreach manager and a program coordinator, and they are both PhDs with a long education history, and we employ them full-time to travel the state and be a resource and asset to teachers. So we've been traveling to all the different teachers in service, different conferences, computer science. We've been doing a number of Zoom meetings across the state. Our team has office hours with teachers. The great thing about the program, and I kind of glazed through a lot of this, but it doesn't actually require any prior training on the teachers. Typically with a 30-minute Zoom call, they're up to speed and what they need to know. And this works really well as an augmentation to their course. So they don't have to bake it into their curriculum. They can take their curriculum and through that lesson planner, find the skills that reinforce what they're doing. So think of it almost as like a digital flashcard type system. Now, teachers who do go through our program are eligible for Teams credit and professional development. So there is certainly an incentive for those teachers to go through it. The state has bought 2,000 licenses for teachers to train on this as well, because it certainly is helpful from a professional development standpoint. Senator?
I hear you talk about that 25, we narrowed down, but I kind of worry about the 39,975 that's still out there. And with that, in your program, is there some kind of credentialing certificate at the end of your program? If a child goes through this program, can it be credentialed to take that into the course to show they've gone through this kind of program?
Absolutely. So it's a great question. So anyone who's been following the news with everything developing about generative AI, for example, which is one subset of data science, you'll know that whatever you've read about is already out of date. It's growing it's really fast. And so that's one reason the data science industry as a whole doesn't have the same credentialing process you would have in, say, passing the bar exam or medical licensure exam. We do offer credentials on our platform, so they will earn a certificate and a badge. The corporations that we work with do recognize those, and in many cases, our corporate clients trust us to help them vet the people that they're hiring. And so there are a number of different industry credentials out there. The credentials that we give will speak to those different courses that they're studying as well. And part of it is really what I'm envisioning is building. When we talk about building the workforce, it's the education, it's the credentials, but it's also the workplace experience, getting them that on-the-job training. And so I think that's what's important about this person we're looking to hire. It's part of them making sure that this intern is not just going to be pouring coffee, but that they're actually building dashboards and doing data analytics in that program. And again, that next part of that project is getting the universities in there as well to offer scholarships and ensure that they have a good exposure there as well.
One more question. With regard to your target audience, is it specifically public schools, or are private schools and institutions also included?
So we're open to any schools that want to use our software, and in this case, its license is provided by the Alabama State Department of Education. So our primary reach is through that. If there are other schools that are interested, we'd certainly be happy and eager to talk to them.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman, you've heard from Josh about this exciting program. I'd like to motion that we support this pilot program in fiscal 2024. The details are behind tab 4 in our packets.
All right, you've heard the motion, and you've been instructed to look at tab 4 for the details of the specific dollar amount for Innovate Alabama to appropriate for this particular program. Is there a second to the motion? We have a second. The board will vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And it passes. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Josh. Crutchfield?
Yes. Okay, next major presentation is outdoor rec. You guys heard from the last board meeting that we had made some progress. So you're going to hear from Mr. Abe Harper today. We'll do the introduction, and then we'll hear some details of where we are with that program.
Mr. Vice Chairman, first and foremost, thank you, and the team thank you for hosting us today. It's just a beautiful institution. I'm really excited today to share the progress we've made on our outdoor recreation recommendations. Trust the test 3 times. We're currently finalizing the position description for the lead director on the outdoor recreation recommendations. As you can imagine, we've had a strong interest in that. So as we're working through that, we've also had the opportunity to begin making our final selections for the Council on Outdoor Recreation. And we aim to have both of those completed by our meeting coming up in October. For the more immediacy of the moment, we're working on focusing on our biggest lead item, which is the RFP to acquire a supplier for specific areas of that initiative. That'll be the website, the marketing and branding support, and planning and creating the asset map. We made the decision to try to consolidate these activities into a single RFP with the goal of keeping the messaging consistent across all initiatives. The goal was to have that RFP released by the end of August, but our team, as usual, has outperformed, and that RFP was released earlier this week. So the selection should be made no later than October 2nd, and I'd like to invite Casey Stark from Paradis to the program to share a few more details with us.
I'm going to move this down a little shorter than Josh. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Casey Stark, and I serve as a communications specialist at Paradis PR. We have the privilege of communicating Innovate Alabama's mission and supporting the organization as it introduces new initiatives and programs. Following the release of the Council on Outdoor Recreation's 13 recommendations, Innovate Alabama began the first step in executing 2 of these. Yesterday, August 28th, as Abe said, Innovate Alabama issued a request for proposal to develop a website that will serve as a hub for all outdoor recreation assets in Alabama, as well as a comprehensive long-term outdoor recreation marketing campaign for the state of Alabama. Innovate Alabama issued this RFP to more than 70 Alabama agencies of small and large scale from 13 cities across our state to submit a response. These agencies have been charged with detailing how they will build a functional, engaging website, as well as a robust, brand-aligned marketing campaign that highlights Innovate Alabama's outdoor rec programs and the state's broader outdoor recreation ecosystem. In the previous request for proposal focused on Innovate Alabama's website redesign that we shared last board meeting, we received a 20% response rate for proposals and expect similar results during this RFP process. The proposal deadline is Wednesday, September 13th, and Innovate Alabama leadership will narrow down the submissions to a short list based off the following criteria. 1, firm experience and qualifications, including innovation and outdoor rec expertise. 2, value. 3, quality of previous work and references. 4, the ability to meet proposed deadlines. 5, completeness of requested information. And lastly, overall approach to providing services at all levels. And Innovate Alabama looks forward to reviewing proposals in the coming weeks. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Harper. Ms. Crutchfield, back to you.
Okay, final.
We got budget discussion.
Yes, we have a budget discussion. So I'm going to be really quick with this. You have the budget comparison from 2023 and what we're proposing for 2024. Just a couple of highlights. I think essentially, just a reminder, our fiscal years run with the 1st of October to 30 September versus the calendar year. So we will start our year on the 1st of October. If you take a look at the 2023 budget, compare that to what we've done in the aggregate, we've obligated $21.9 million of that budget. So what we're doing the rest of the fiscal year is just getting those obligations to be made, collecting the cost and the invoices for that. And then if you look at the proposed budget, we're doing a couple of increases in regards to access to capital. You've heard about the Silver Sitter program. We're going to increase that. We're proposing to increase that by $2 million. SSBCI, we will no longer fund any of that activity. That will come directly from the funds that will be awarded from Treasury in terms of administration of that program. So that's really, really good. And we're looking at increasing or just holding steady on the Innovate Alabama network designation program. So we're expecting another $6 million on that one next year. Talent attraction and retention, we're keeping with the same structure in terms of the programs. However, we are moving the sustaining program activity to the network designation for competition versus funding those directly of the organization's budget. So what we will be focused on is low-level pilots, which much like Quant Hub that you heard today, just to fuel innovation and conversation around those programs. Let's see, and then you'll have note the outdoor recreation budget will continue with the $5 million allocation from Innovate Alabama. They also received a $15 million investment through the legislature this past session. So they'll be executing at about $20 million towards the 13 recommendations. One of the things that we would like to do is consider a grant program for outdoor recreation for next year, very similar to some of the programs that you've heard today. And then operations, for the most part, we are seeing consistent slight increase in that, just based on the fact that we will be hiring additional personnel into next year. So,
all right, thank you, Ms. Crutchfield. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, do you have any questions or any discussions related to the budget? Mr. Chairman. We have a motion for the approval of the budget. Do you hear a second? We have a second. The board will vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? And the budget is approved.
Thank you. Awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, we've moved through the process.
Yes.
We,
Under 2 hours.
we said that this was going to be a shorter meeting. I don't know why we said that.
It's 10 minutes shorter. 10 minutes shorter.
Telling you. We've had some great discussions today, some really important things that we've gone through. So let me thank the board again for their diligence and for the opportunity to be a part and to be in attendance. Ms. Crutchfield, thank you for your leadership. Jordan, thank you for yours, sir, and all the others that are involved here. Let me mention, for the good of the order, and I want to give everyone an opportunity to make a final statement if they wish. First off, Dr. Morris, I want to thank all the folks at Tuskegee for giving us the opportunity to be here today. We appreciate very much their hospitality. Let me remind the board that we have a meeting on October the 24th, the next meeting, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Crutchfield, that is scheduled in Mobile. Okay, so everyone can make note of that. Also, we have a change in the December meeting. This was a notice that went out to all the board earlier, to where the meeting is going to be on December the 14th. December the 14th, and we'll get back to you with more details on exactly the location of that particular meeting. If there are any initiatives that the board has, any thoughts that you want us to consider as we move into the next year, my encouragement is that you go to Ms. Crutchfield and give her your thought and feedback on things that we need to be focused on, as well as many of those that are in the audience, for those that are listening to our event today, that if you've got thoughts or ideas and you want to communicate, if many of you have with Cynthia Crutchfield, feel free to do that. Is there any other word from any of the board members, or anything else that we need to talk about or share today? Before we adjourn, I have one thing I would like to share. Today is Abe Harper's birthday. Abe is 29 today. And we're excited for him. Happy birthday, my friend. Well, again, thank you all for being here. We have a motion for adjournment. Do we hear a second? All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.